What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's Saturday, so time to take a look back at the last 2 weeks, talk about the players who have risen the most in ADP. I now have a free app on the website where you can see all of this for yourself. You can easily search specific dates, positions you want to see. So if you want to check out the biggest risers and fallers at tight end over the last 4 days, just as an example, you can select those filters. It'll easily give you a table and a chart. You can see the results visually there. It's free for now. If too many people use it, crashes the app, then we might have to put it behind the paywall. But for right now, again, 100% free, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. So 2 weeks ago, we made predictions as to who we thought over those last 2 weeks will be rising in ADP. So time to see if we are right in those predictions. I was guessing that Miles Sanders, Roschon Johnson, Jacoby Myers, Josh Downs, and Kyle Pitts would rise in ADP. Sanders, Myers, Downs have all risen slightly over the last 2 weeks, while Roschon's actually fallen 3 spots, and then Pitts fell by about half a pick. So not too bad. We went 3 out of 5. We'll try and make it 4 out of 5 or even maybe 5 out of 5 this week. But as per usual, those predictions coming at the end of the video. So who's risen over the last 2 weeks? Biggest riser, one of the same ones as last week, Alexander Mattison, up nearly 2 more rounds, now going in the late 7th round. People, obviously, it's the exact same reason as before. Everyone's gaining more confidence that Dalvin Cook's going to be cut after June 1st, that Mattison's going to be the lead back in this offense, going to be valuable. Really difficult to say right now what exactly is going to happen. There is still the possibility that he restructures and stays. There is still the possibility that he is cut, but they bring another back. So it's the same take as last week. You got to go with what you think is going to happen. If you think Cook is gone, Mattison is fully capable of being, that not necessarily 100% back. They're still going to use some of the backups, but the lead back getting all those touches, basically doing what he's done when Dalvin Cook's missed time over the past few seasons. I mean, he's going to be worth a 3rd or 4th round pick. So even getting him at his new ADP in the 7th round is phenomenal value. If you think that they cut Dalvin Cook, but they bring in, let's just say, Fournette or Ezekiel Elliott, or they trade for someone else, if they just bring someone else in, then the 7th round is probably a little too early for Mattison. So you got to go with what you think is going to happen. Obviously makes him a risky pick because none of us actually know what's going to happen, but go with what you think. But yeah, the upside is if Mattison's the only back there, he'll be a 3rd or 4th round pick. 2 big late round running back risers are Jerome Ford and Tank Bigsby. No new news on them. It's just people, coming to terms with how good of a spot that they're in. I guess there's been a little bit of hype on Tank Bigsby, just kind of highlighting that he is, pretty decent in the receiving game. And they did actually take him a little bit early. So a little bit of hype there, but it really just is the industry understanding that, late 16th round for Jerome Ford, early 15th round for Tank Bigsby. It's late, right? And when you get into those spots, you're really just looking for someone who has a chance. And obviously on 2 good offenses, 2 people who are pretty much locked into the number 2 roles, they're going to produce, and they're going to outproduce this ADP. I'm pretty sure each one can probably rise 1 to 2 more rounds until it's going to be okay, let's not be taking them. They're not 13th round picks, but I could pretty easily see them going in that 14, 15 round range. Again, Tank Bigsby can be used in the receiving game. We know that ETN was not amazing in the receiving game last season, ran plenty of routes, but wasn't commanding very many targets. And just it being a good offense, even just having him as a handcuff that late is perfectly fine, or handcuffing someone else's pick of ETN. And then the same thing for Jerome Ford. I mean, we've seen backups for Cleveland produce in recent seasons. Obviously, Kareem Hunt is the one that has produced the most, but Jerome Ford can be productive as the number 2. And then it's the upside if Nick Chubb got hurt. Obviously, Jerome Ford going to be awesome. Sam LaPorta has just been catapulting up drafts, up over a round, now going in the 14th round as the tight end 19 off boards. He's definitely been getting some hype out of camp. He's looked great. The team's been very excited about his development. And really just when people look at the depth chart, the names they see, they're not very inspired by. Like it's going to be pretty easy for LaPorta to be the tight end one in Detroit. Then everyone also knows Detroit going to be a very good offense this season. There'll be plenty of touchdowns and yards to go around. Then you take it one step further and you're like, well, Jameson Williams is also suspended for 6 games. So it's like there's so many positive things that it makes complete sense. He's rising. I have definitely moved him up recently, but it's starting to be a situation like with Kincaid. We talked about Kincaid was getting so much hype and really reaching a range in the draft where he has to hit his 90th percentile outcome, even just to return value. That's not the case yet for LaPorta, but he is still a rookie tight end. Rookie tight ends rarely produce really high-end numbers in fantasy. They can produce decent numbers and he can return value where he's currently going right now. But as he starts to move up, it's going to be more and more difficult for him to really outproduce his ADP, because both Kincaid and LaPorta at their current ADPs, even if they go a little bit higher, can return value. But if you were getting, let's say, LaPorta in the 16th or the 17th round, the opportunity cost is low. The other tight ends, but even other running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks, there's not very many amazing picks that late. But in the 14th round, in the soon-to-be 13th round, now we're starting to get into rounds where there's actually a lot of really good players, really high upside players. And so as the opportunity cost goes up, it's just going to be more and more difficult for him to really outproduce the ADP. So fine with it, but as he starts rising, not in love with it for LaPorta. An unfortunate late round riser is Marvin Mims. You all know that I really like Marvin Mims this season. He's up about a round into the 14th round. I have said that I'm going to remain ahead of ADP on Mims all summer. I'm just hoping that the hype doesn't get too much to where, he rises into the 12th round, the 11th round. Then it's going to start to be a little bit difficult to be ahead of ADP. I was hoping that, he'd stay in this 14th to 16th round range all summer. But if he's already into the 14th and there hasn't even been a hype video yet from camp, we're entering danger zone very soon for Marvin Mims. But like I said, I really like him. I really think that by the end of the season, he can be the wide receiver 2. And I also believe that Sean Payton can turn this Denver offense around. And if both of those things happen, he's going to shatter his ADP. So still drafting him, just hoping we don't have to take him too early. Going a little bit earlier in drafts, Samaje Perine, also on Denver, up 8 spots now into the late 9th round. So he is now in these single-digit rounds, becoming more and more clear that Denver expects him to fill a role in this offense even when Javonte Williams is healthy. And that's the big thing. Because before, it was well, if Williams isn't healthy, he's going to have a nice role in those games. Now it's that's true. And also, when Williams is healthy, Perine's still going to have a role. And if I don't think Javonte Williams is going to be fully healthy at all this season. Even at the end of the year, I don't think he's going to be fully healthy. He'll be playing, I'm sure, but not fully healthy. Kind of like what we saw with Dobbins last year, where you watch him run and you're like, oh, you still need a little bit more time to get back to 100%. And then this season, we're expecting Dobbins to be okay. That's kind of how I see this playing out. Next season, I think we're looking at Javonte Williams and be all right, now he's back. Now we can expect the production we were expecting before the injury. I don't think that happens this season. And so, yeah, it makes sense that Perine is flying up draft boards if that's the case. And then also, again, they've been vocal about, no, he's going to have a role even when Williams is healthy, deserves to rise, still a good pick. Another running back riser in that same general range is Antonio Gibson, up 8 spots into the late 10th round. I know for a fact some sites have been hyping up Gibson. They've been hyping up grabbing both Gibson and Brian Robinson. I will continue to be against both of them, whether that's drafting both, whether that's drafting one of the two. I would not do it. I am not doing it. The Commanders hated Gibson last season. He has not broken out yet, even when given significant opportunity. We are not expecting this offense to be amazing this season. They drafted Chris Rodriguez, and they had an a third round grade on him. So they really, really like him as a prospect. I just don't see how a 3 running back committee on a below average team is someone that I want to draft this early. Like, we're starting to get into a range with Gibson where there are other very high upside, even running backs in that range. So if you have the option between Gibson in the 10th, or if you really want to attack this offense, why not Chris Rodriguez with one of the final like 5 picks in the draft, late 18th round, he's available. I would rather take a shot on that than Gibson. I don't see it happening with Gibson. I definitely don't see it happening with Brian Robinson. I would just spend the pick on Chris Rodriguez late. Going back to wide receiver, both Bateman and Zay Flowers have risen a bit. Bateman more than Flowers, but both are moving up. Bateman now in the late 8th round, Flowers into the early 8th round. I've been staying away from the Baltimore wide receivers. I'm not against drafting them. If you think Flowers is a really good talent and they utilize him a lot as like a, kind of a centerpiece of the offense, just moving him around a bunch, just getting the ball into his hands, sure, take him. If you think that Bateman, my model loved Bateman coming out of college. He hasn't produced yet, mostly due to injuries and like situation, but he's a very, very good wide receiver. And if you think Bateman's being undervalued and that they're going to use him consistently, especially deep downfield, sure, draft him. On average, if we just kind of look at this offense and say, well, like Mark Andrews is really their wide receiver 1. Lamar's going to run it a ton. Dobbins going to run it a ton. Maybe you just want to gain exposure to like Lamar. Like if you think that this passing offense is going to really turn things around, they're going to be a more pro style offense, they're going to be utilizing these wide receivers more. I feel like, to me, if you believe that's happening, instead of trying to guess on which one between Odell, Flowers, Bateman, which one's really going to break out, outproduce their ADP, just draft Lamar Jackson. And under that circumstance, if they're all doing well, he's going to do really, really well. Or draft Dobbins, because if they're really producing in those areas, it means they're scoring a lot of touchdowns. They're a very high-end offense. Dobbins, clearly the running back 1, going to be used a little more in the receiving game this season. Why not draft him? It's like, I feel like if you think those things are happening, there are other bets that are much more likely to happen than, even if you get it right and the wide receivers use more, you still have to guess right as to which one is outproducing ADP, because on average, if you look at projections, they're all going ahead of where they should be projected because people are trying to guess on which one. So I would just gain the exposure to Mark Andrews, Lamar, Dobbins, but I'm not against these wide receivers because I do actually think like all of them are very, very talented, all could break out, but I don't really know which one is going to do so. So if you have a take, do it. I don't, so I'm just sticking with like the 3 I mentioned before. Going even earlier in drafts, Joe Mixon up about another half round into the late 5th round. This one is 100% established the run, hyping him up, moving him up in their rankings, talking about him on the podcast. That's the reason for his rise. And, since so many people watch their content, whenever they change their rankings, ADPs change. Even with the rise, though, I still have Mixon at about a half round of value. I think I've had Mixon originally this summer. I think I had him at like 3 rounds of value. He's been slowly moving up, even at the new ADP, about a half round. ETR has him at about 3 picks of value, so I would expect him to move up another 3 picks or so, but still a good pick where he's going right now. He'll probably settle in around that mid-5th round, and then it'll just depend on news. If we get news that he's not being suspended, that he's definitely staying with the team, I would think he rises into the 3rd round. That would be my guess, or maybe that same range as Mattison would rise, that like late 3rd, 4th round, kind of where like, I guess it's like Deebo Samuel, Calvin Ridley, Christian Watson, who we're going to talk about in a second, like that general range. Those are wide receivers, obviously, but like that range after that first tier of running back. That's where I would expect both Mattison and Mixon to end up if we get positive news for both of them. But right now, since that's possible, definitely a good pick still in the 5th round. But yeah, final riser we'll go over before prediction time. Christian Watson up another 3.5 spots into the early 4th round. Just like with Gibson, I am not on board with this one. I really do think this ADP is too high. Maybe it really is people trying to capture that weekly upside, capture just the upside that if he hits really big. I just don't see it. We don't know how good Jordan Love is going to be. We certainly know he's going to be worse than Aaron Rodgers, but we don't know how bad really he's going to be. We know that Christian Watson's like a good player, but taking him in the early 4th round ahead of Mike Williams, DeAndre Hopkins, Judy, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Drake London, Terry McLaurin, like, yeah, maybe there are some of those players that you want to draft him ahead of, and maybe all of them. Maybe you really think he goes ahead of all those players. But in the early 4th round, he's got 41 receptions as a rookie, catching passes from a quarterback that has, 50 career completions, trending towards being a 3rd round pick. There are so many other positions that are much safer at that spot, offer plenty of upside. It's just you're really capping the upside of Christian Watson this early in his career with so many unknowns at quarterback if he's going to creep into the 3rd round. It's just too early, in my opinion. So that's it for risers last 2 weeks. Who do I think will rise over the next 2 weeks? If you guys want to play along, put your predictions in the comment section below. One player that I've seen available a lot, and I want to say like 3 consecutive drafts I've taken him in like the exact spot that he's going, and he's actually fallen a little bit, so maybe he's going to be a faller, but I think he should be a riser. John Mechie. He was a very, very highly rated prospect in last year's draft. The Texans traded up to pick 44 to take him, despite the fact that like they obviously knew he wasn't going to play early in the season because he was coming off the torn ACL in college. Like it was almost a similar situation like Jameson Williams, where it was like, obviously the team loves him because they traded up to get him at 44, knowing he wasn't going to be healthy to start the year. He's then unfortunately diagnosed with leukemia last July. And so obviously when you combine that with, the torn ACL, not able to play last season, but all positive reports at this point. He's been a full go. He had a little bit of a hamstring injury a little while ago, but he's good to go. He's going to be playing this season. And that wide receiver room is very open, especially with Brandon Cooks leaving. I mean, you look at the players in this wide receiver room: Nico Collins, Mechie, Robert Woods, Nathaniel Dell, Noah Brown. Like, there are a number of players on that list who cannot be wide receiver ones. Dell cannot be a wide receiver one. Brown is not a wide receiver one. Robert Woods, at this point of his career, probably too old to be wide receiver one. So you're looking at like a 50-50 shot that John Mechie or Nico Collins is going to be the wide receiver one of this team, and he's currently available in the 16th round. So I'm guessing people start to recognize that. The reports are going to be positive out of camp because he is a really good player, and the ADP moves up corresponding with that. I also think Tyjae Spears will see his ADP rise. People not only want a handcuff, obviously, when they draft Derrick Henry, but people are desperate for upside at running back in those final rounds. Spears, a player my model was in love with this season. He's getting great reports out of camp so far, so I definitely think people will start to see his name late and be like, well, yeah, I need one more running back. He's on an offense we've seen running backs produce very well in the past. Good handcuff, even if he doesn't break out. Yeah, it's a great pick late. I think people recognize that. I think Austin Eckler's ADP is going to rise. We were somehow able to get him at like 11, 12. I think I got him in the early 2nd round at points this month. Predictably signs the deal this week, basically updating the deal with incentives to pay him a little bit more money because he's worth more money. Going to be playing for the Chargers again this season. I don't know why his ADP has been so low, but I have to imagine that's going to climb into the mid 1st round. 4th riser I'm expecting to see Treylon Burks. Was a 1st round pick last season. Zero competition for targets in that wide receiver room. Super positive reports out of camp right now. It's going to be pretty easy for him to climb. And then finally, Devon Achane. No one wants to draft Mostert. No one wants to draft Jeff Wilson. Mike McDaniel was in love with Achane in the pre-draft process, was making sure they drafted him. Reports so far have been glowing about Achane in camp. He's at pick 110 right now. I can almost guarantee you he'll be a top 100 pick in a month. That's like almost a guarantee. So those are the top risers over the last 2 weeks, along with 5 players I think will rise in ADP over the next 2 weeks. I'll be back tomorrow to go over a draft strategy simulation project I did this offseason. Monday, another episode of Mock Draft Monday. And then Tuesday, live, 6:30 Eastern, to do some Underdog drafts with all of you. So that, my friends, is in this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? How about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.